So good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our legislative preview for the 2023 session. I'm Glenn Montgomery. I'm the Executive Director of Vision Action Network. And for some of you who may not be familiar with VAN, we've been around for about 20 years, born out of a community process in Washington County. And it was at a time when the county had gone through explosive growth and the community felt very disconnected. And they wanted an organization that had a mission to bring all sectors together to address issues that impacted the residents of Washington County. So that's how VAN was created. And we've been a convener and facilitator of what we call cross-sector collaboration since that time. And we are very pleased to have some of our legislators here today. In March, we did a recap of the legislative session, the short session, in 2022, and it was very successful. People were happy about it, both legislators and attendees, so we decided let's do a preview of the long session. So I'm thankful to have some of our representatives and senators and senator-elects to join us here today. If you haven't already and you'd like to put your name and perhaps your contact information in the chat, feel free to do that, folks. But essentially what we're going to do is give our legislators an opportunity to share some of their perspectives and priorities about what they see coming for the 2023 legislative session. And if there's time, and I hope there is, we will give our audience an opportunity to ask questions, whether you want to raise your hand and ask a question verbally or put a question in the chat. We'll be tracking the chat room as well. Feel free to do that. I also, before we get further along, I want to let you know about a couple of events that are coming up in January. I know we're approaching the holidays. People are going to start getting distracted. So I want to make sure you know about two events that may be of import to you. One of them is called Advance. It was formerly Meet the Funders. It's where we bring nonprofits and funders together to cultivate relationships. That will be taking place on January 24th. And Jenny's going to put a link for the registration and the information in the chat room. Very popular event. Some of you have attended that multiple years. And the other event is a behavioral health jobs fair and career conference. We've been supporting the behavioral health sector given the state of crisis that we have been in, both in Washington County and regionally, frankly, nationwide. There is an event that will be taking place on Saturday, January 21st. So it's a kind of a traditional jobs fair, but there are also going to be some sessions where we are engaging folks in conversation on behavioral health. That'll be Saturday the 21st. So Jenny will put that information in the chat as well. So without further ado, I'd like to allow our legislators to share some comments, and I'm not going to necessarily go in order of seniority, if there is such a thing. I am going to start with Senator-elect Aaron Woods, in part because he has to leave due to a conflict at 9 o'clock. So I want to give him an opportunity to share some thoughts. So Senator-elect Woods, welcome, and you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Glenn, and welcome. Good morning to everyone. As you all know, this is my first meeting here, and I'm just happy to be a part of this. So what I want to share this morning, I'm working on a number of LCs in specific areas that I've heard from constituents and others where there's a need and a concern. And so one of the first ones I just want to mention, and this is one that is, I'll say, has a future need, but also right now. And that's in the area of electric vehicle battery disposal. That was interesting. That was brought to my attention by actually a constituent. But basically, it's just what it says. We do not have a EV battery disposal program. I think we all know with the advent of electric vehicles, there's some data that shows that electric vehicles, it's going to be pretty high on our list of changing from, our gasoline vehicles otherwise. But the point is, we don't have a program. DEQ does not have a program for EV battery disposal. And that's one of the things that I am looking to work on. Another one that's more closer to home has to do with individuals who are living in subsidized housing, affordable housing. We have, gosh, well, I'll use this number because I know this is it collectively, over 2,000 units here throughout the state that will be coming up on potentially losing their subsidized apartments. And so one of the things that through the federal low-income housing tax credit program, that an individual owner of that property has agreed to a 30-year limit, or I should say 30 years of maintaining the affordable housing rental rate. And we have a number of properties throughout the state that are coming up on this 30-year period, quite a few of them. And so I'm working on an LC that would help to, first of all, provide some clarity concerning this, so that when someone signs up for one of these properties, and even someone who is signing a new lease, that they would have a clarity in understanding that this property is under the federal low-income housing arrangement, and that within whatever period of time that you may be affected by the rent. So I think that's a very important one, because, seniors, these mostly seniors that are in these properties, and they want to age in place. I mean, I don't think that's something too much to ask. So that's another one that I'm looking at. Another one too has to do with individual owners or operators that engage in sport or recreational activities. And what this LC would do would to look at various ways to release these operators from claims for ordinary negligence. Today, an operator can be sued just about for anything, and in a manner that could cause them, since a lot of these are small operators, to it only takes one frivolous lawsuit for them to be out of business. And so these operators, I'm talking about sport or recreational activities, could be indoor, outdoor activities, boating, rafting, biking, etc. But that's another one that I'm looking at. And let's see, and then one other one, and this is specifically with Wilsonville and the Boone Bridge. Those of you who have gone across the Boone Bridge, you know that on the south side of the Willamette River, there's a community called Charbonneau. And in order for Charbonneau to get into Wilsonville proper, they have to go across the bridge. And so that is a concern for the residents, specifically when we talk about tolling. And this is what I'm talking about. Depending on where the gantries are located, there's a potential where the residents of Charbonneau would be affected every time they would go across the bridge. And that's not just Charbonneau, that also affects the citizens of Wilsonville who go across the bridge as well for going into Charbonneau. So there's a proposal here we're looking at to see how we can mitigate that, to ensure that the citizens of the city of Wilsonville are not charged a toll each time they go across that bridge. And for those of you who are not aware, Charbonneau has a high number of seniors So that would affect them as well from a cost standpoint. So that's another one we're looking at here. And let me see if I left any off. I'm also will be working on a couple others, which I won't mention, that I look at signing on with a couple of other senators and one other representative on some things they're doing. So this my first time out of the gate, so to speak. This is what I'm looking to work on, and for right now, and a few other things you should know about. Two other things, real quick. I am working with our state CIO on the Future Ready Oregon IT offering, specifically under cybersecurity workforce development training. This is this is an area of high need, and it's something I was asked to work on from the governor's office with our CIO. So we're in the throes of that right now. We look for some very good things to come out of that, specifically from the training standpoint. I'm hoping, not hoping, I shouldn't say hoping, I'm looking for an industry association that will provide this training offering to the state, very specifically, that'll help to turn out individuals in the IT arena in a very, I'll say, quick amount of time, less than a year actually, and with certification. So that's a big one that is of high need, and I feel very strongly about that one. And then let's see. Oh, broadband. Broadband initiative. I think a lot of you are aware that the broadband office has been reorganized. We have a new committee, and we have a lot of money that we can that we have access to. The thing that we need to do is to make sure that our plan and offering provides those things that are being recommended for a good, strong broadband plan. And I think we're on our way to that. And so I'm working with a, what do we call ourselves? I think it's a team or committee that is supporting the efforts of our broadband office. So that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm sure I'll have more as we go forward.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, Senator-elect Woods. And on deck, our next speaker is Senator-elect Campos, currently Representative Campos. You have the floor.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you so much, Glenn, for the invite and for bringing us all together. And thank you to all of you for hopping on this morning. My name is WLnsvey Campos, she, her pronouns. As Glenn mentioned, state representative currently for House District 28, which is parts of Aloha and Beaverton, and recently elected to serve next year as the state senator for District 18, which is parts of Aloha, Beaverton, and Hillsboro. I am super excited to get going. There's a lot of issues that we are all looking to tackle, whether it's our individual offices or the caucus agendas that we are putting together. I have a list of, I don't know, 20, 30, it might be around 30 at this point in time, pieces of legislation that I will be hopeful to get through the building. And so, of course, we won't have time to go through all of that. I'll give you sort of a high level of some of the buckets of issues that I will be spending quite a bit of time talking about and working on for the next several months. One of those is a conversation around food insecurity. Why food insecurity? Well, you know, so many of us recognize that this is an issue for so many of our different communities are facing, and certainly one that has been perpetuated and highlighted over the last couple of years. I myself, and so I'm somebody who, for those unfamiliar with my background, I grew up in a low-income household. My dad worked really hard to make sure that I could have opportunities in life, but we struggled along the way. And so there were points in time in my life that, for example, I was on SNAP benefits or I was on free and reduced lunch. And so it's an issue that's personal, one that I've experienced, but also one that I've seen as somebody who in the past worked within the social services space, specifically getting folks into housing. But I also have burned into my brain the image of I think it was April of 2020, Aloha High School was offering food boxes, and there was a long line stretched for quite a bit of ways of cars waiting for food boxes, because we know that so many folks that for their children, meals at school might be the one solid meal that they are able to get. And so I am working on 3 that I will be introducing, and one that Representative Neron may bring up that she will be bringing forth that I'll be glad to work with her on. But essentially, from the ones that I will be introducing, we'll be exploring ways in which we can expand SNAP benefits to more folks who are currently not eligible. And that would look like a state-funded program. And again, it's one of those things that we know it's an issue that we talk about when we talk about addressing child poverty. It's an issue that we talk about when we talk about folks being able to go to work and feel focused and like they can get through the day. So we're going to be looking at expanding those benefits. We're going to be looking at how we can expand what folks can access through their benefits for those that currently have it. So right now, folks who have SNAP benefits can't access hot foods through their benefits. And so we're hopeful to implement what is called a restaurant meals program, which would allow restaurants to opt in, and they would receive funding and support to be able to have folks visit the restaurants and access hot foods through their cards. And it's one of those things that sort of feels like at some point in time, there was a conversation that was had about hot meals being more of a luxury item than it actually is, because it is not, right? And so it's one of those things that we would like to see addressed in whatever ways we can at the state level. So those are just a few of the things. That's one of the buckets that I'm excited about working on. Another one, of course, housing. We know that this is an issue, that we're facing a crisis here in this state, and that it's an issue that so many of us care about. And so there are a number of different legislative concepts that are going to be introduced around this issue. One of the conversations that we're having right now is that the revenue forecast predicts that there are folks that might see upwards of a 14 to 15% rent increase, and that's as a result of inflation. And we know that the biggest driver right now to folks becoming homeless is a lack of affordable housing. And so that preservation, and I'm so excited about some of the work that, Senator-elect Woods and Representative Neron will be doing in terms of some of that preservation of existing affordable housing. And so we've got to get that through the building, but we also have to have this conversation of how do we make sure that rent is sustainable for folks. And that, I have had conversations with folks in this area that tell me I'm going to be moving further and further out because it's just, and that means, a different school for their child. It means a different environment. It's that lack of stability that we know impacts graduation rates. that impacts the success of a student down the line. And so it's an issue that we're talking about. We're exploring a couple of solutions there and are excited that we will have a meeting later today to talk with some of the stakeholders, housing advocates, landlords, housing providers, all of the folks to see what we can get through the building to address this as an issue. One of the statistics that I saw was done by, I don't remember, a national group that said that a median $100 increase in rent leads to a 9% increase of those who become homeless. And that's just $100 rent increase that we're talking about. And here in Oregon, we're looking at folks, again, who might possibly see an increase of 14%. We've got another bill that I'm super excited for that I'll highlight here that maybe some folks at this point in time have heard about. And if not, I will make sure that I drop my contact info. So if there are any questions that y'all can reach me and we can get questions answered if there's anything that you're interested in. If you're like, hey, that sounds like something that I or my organization would love to support, how can we do that? So I'll drop my info, but this other one is the Nonprofit Modernization Act. And that's going to, I see some familiarity on here about that. I'm excited to be working with the Northwest Health Foundation on that. And I know so many other folks are involved. And you know, we've got to take a look at nonprofit wages. We've got to take a look at the government contracting practices. And so those are just some of the things that this Nonprofit Modernization Act is going to, is hopeful to tackle. It's a big issue. And so it's a step, it's a step in so much more that needs to be done within the nonprofit space. But when they came to me with this issue back in, it was probably early in the summer, I was like, how can I help? And can this bill be mine? Because I mean, I have spent the last several years working within the nonprofit space, have seen a lot of these issues firsthand, and we've got work to do there. And so there's so much more that I could talk about. The one other thing that I will highlight before this gets passed on to, I'm guessing, Rep Neron, is transportation. Transportation and transportation infrastructure is going to take a lot of the air in the building, is what it's sounding like in this coming session. There will be a lot of conversations about the interstate bridge replacement, about the Rose Quarter project, and so that's a big topic that I'm just highlighting it as a big topic that we're going to be seeing this coming session. But one of the things that, as we are talking about transportation infrastructure, that I am hopeful to highlight in these conversations is the need to invest in walkability, in bikeability, in public transportation, in making sure that we are investing in the roads that we currently have. I know definitely as somebody who represents a good portion of unincorporated Washington County, I hear on the doors when I talk to people, I get the emails from folks that say, you know, my child has to stand outside waiting for their school bus on a road where there is no sidewalk. I last year was living in an area where that was exactly the case, where I would see where the children stood at the school bus, and not the safest road. And so we have to have that conversation about how we are investing in our current infrastructure. And I will be pushing that, and I will be continuing to have conversations at the different government levels with our county commissioners, with the city, to talk about investments that are coming and more that we need to see on roads like TV Highway and like Farmington Road. So that's my preview.
Thank you, Senator Campos. Razier diligently put in 3 questions in the chat room. So for the legislators, if you want to scroll through the chat and see what she's asked, I think Senator-elect Campos answered a little bit of number one in terms of the Modernization Act that might address the first question, but there were questions pertaining to arts funding and advocacy. So hopefully, if you have time, you can come back to answer those questions. Representative Neron, I'm glad to see you here. I know early on we hadn't got a confirmation, but you were able to join us after all. So thank you for being here, and I'd like to give you the floor now.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. My team is here as well. So if there are other questions thrown into the chat that I can't answer, I'm thankful to have the opportunity to introduce you to my team, Sarah Kim and Pablo Nieves Valenzuela in our office serving House District 26. We work on behalf of the communities of Wilsonville, King City, Tigard, Sherwood, and the surrounds, and our district changed significantly going forward. We half of House District 26 will now be served by Representative-elect Hi Pham. So really excited to welcome new members into our caucus and into our chambers this particular year as we've redistricted. So I want to, thank you all for the conversation this morning and the opportunity to share some highlights of what I've been working on. You may know that I was a French and Spanish teacher prior to being a legislator, and that experience in the classroom really motivated me to serve and make sure that we are supporting families so that our children have access to education, funding our expectations of education. And I'm generally interested in a wide variety of topics. So our bills reflect that as well. I serve currently on the Education Committee as Vice Chair of the Policy Committee. I'm also on the Early Childhood Committee and the Housing Committee. Now going forward, it's likely that our Early Childhood Committee will wrap into at least one other committee, whether it's Human Services or Education or both. And that just has to do with the need to streamline the difficulty of supporting so many different committees and member schedules, and the magnitude, the amount of work per topic. So I'm hopeful to track and follow the early childhood work into the Human Services Committee in the coming session, and want to keep with housing conversations as well as look into, more in the environment and energy areas as well. But our bills span many topic areas, so I'll give a quick overview of some of the specifics that we're working on, and feel free to drop specific questions in the chat, and I'll kind of review those after I go through, or as I go through a general list. In the area of education, I'm really focused again on making sure that we're funding our expectation, and core and foundational to that is the current service level calculation. So we have a bill to stabilize that calculation, given that our education sector has such a dramatically different way of budgeting than other departments and agency budgets, because we have local control and we have 197 school districts with 197 different contracts for bargaining. So we need to make sure we're using accurate numbers so that that is not a politicized number. That current service level is a math calculation, and we need to make sure it's accurate so that we can attain that in our projections as a legislature going forward each biennium. So that's a core piece of work that I'm hopeful to get through the entire process. As Senator-elect Campos said, I'm so excited about that. We are going to be partnering on some nutrition and meals programs that we both really care about. We have a lot of colleagues that really care about. I'm focusing on universal school meals and trying to really problem solve, hitting the right mark so that we are pulling down federal funding appropriately, that we're providing meals, because we know that students who are hungry have a very difficult time learning. And then also that could be their only meal, as Senator-elect Campos said of the day or meals of the day. So we want to make sure we've got that universal school meals program continuing to the greatest extent possible. It was essentially piloted during COVID, and we would prefer that the federal government act, but in absence of their action, we need to make sure that we are not letting our Oregon children experience hunger. SNAP eligibility is something I'll be really emphasizing with Senator-elect Campos, as well as the really innovative concept about access to those SNAP benefits in restaurant meals. So I want to just underscore what she brought up. I'm also really focused on, back to the early childhood realm, childcare providers, making sure that there are incentives to become child care providers, that there's financial support for people pursuing their education and opening businesses. We're looking at childcare zoning as well, and really trying to provide navigation help for families that need support with childcare. Also in the area of children's needs, we have a lot of high needs disability kids in the state whose parents are quite logical caregivers and qualify potentially, if we're able to change certain statutes, to be a paid caregiver for a certain number of hours. In the absence of workforce, we know these kids need services, that parents are having to take time off of their careers, etc. There are lots of intersecting issues that families face when they have high needs disability. And so we really want to make sure that we're creating the best structures and looking at what other states have done to support these students and these kids who need extra care and stability at home. And so we'll be working with Senator Gelser and many advocates to try to hit the right balance. And that's a very difficult topic. I'll acknowledge that there is not going to be a perfect answer, and we want to really make sure that we're serving the best of our ability. With limited state dollars, we've got to figure out where we can and how we can serve the most Oregonians possible. In terms of other topics that I'm also interested in, I'll go through the next committee that I mentioned. Housing is very important to me, to our district. I'm so excited to be working with Senator-elect Woods. He has been working really hard and is just going to be very collaborative with that work that we've been doing to make sure that we are preserving publicly supported housing when there's the federal funding and the federal contracts run out. So proactively looking at what we can do as a state, incentivizing, keeping those complexes and housing affordable, looking at some tax credits. And I also am really excited to share that we're looking into a home share program. Home Share Oregon has been matching people maybe who are mortgage burdened with people who are rent burdened. And so when there's an extra bedroom in a home, making sure that there's an actual fit for roommate personality and lifestyle, and then really pairing people up so that we're able to find the extra housing that could potentially exist in our communities. We're looking at removing some tax or incentivizing with tax changes, the ability to rent out a room tax-free under, I believe it's at $1,000 or $750 a month, so that we're able to increase the inventory of affordable housing, and that more people with mortgages may be able to stay in their homes longer and with more stability. As Senator-elect Campos mentioned, we have rent increases that are unsustainable right now. And we were able to cap that at some level, but just the other day had a constituent reach out to me saying her rent was going up by 20%, which seemed so high. And I hadn't realized that in our work there, if the complexes, I believe if it's newer than 15 years old, that rent cap doesn't apply. So in Sherwood, a 3-bedroom at $2,500 right now, 3-bedroom apartment at $2,500 right now is going up 20%. I called the complex and verified, double checked that statute. We've got to look at that again because that is unsustainable. And so working with advocates and working with community members to make sure we improve on those policies that really can help that trajectory of housing costs. I'm really concerned with good governance in general, really want to see public meeting laws be followed, and have worked with a work group on a bill that I brought forward in 2022 that really emphasizes the oversight that the Government Ethics Commission needs, frankly, but doesn't have when violations of public meeting law occur. And this is an area I didn't anticipate feeling so passionate about when I first got into public policy, but we really do need to make sure that our ethics laws are upheld and that people understand those. And I think the poster child for this issue has been our Newburgh School Board, and just making sure that we are not allowing people to weaponize the lack of oversight of our public meeting laws and really supporting democratic processes. So working with that, I'll be bringing forward a bill in partnership with Representative Sosa, who used to be a government ethics commissioner and I believe the chair of the Government Ethics Commission. I also, along with Senator-elect Woods, will be looking at how ODOT is planning their tolling program. And I do have deep concerns about how this will impact disproportionately our low-income Oregonians, as well as certain neighborhoods that don't have alternative routes to their town and their doctor's offices and their post offices and community centers. So really looking at what is equitable and how can we make sure that we are planning for the needed replacement infrastructure. The Boone Bridge is not seismically up to par for a Cascadia event, similar to the interstate bridge crossing. We have many bridges that need attention. Those are critical economic thoroughfares, and we need to really treat them as such with planning, and not though at the expense of one neighborhood or one, say somebody got priced out of the Portland metro area and has to drive farther to their work. How are we making sure that we're keeping them cared for as things around us changed? I welcome Rep Sullman. I see that in the chat and I see you here. It's good to see you this morning. And so I'll just say a couple more things about public safety, environment, and want to just call out the devastating gun violence that has impacted our nation, and today being the 10th anniversary of Sandy Hook. We have so many advocates, those of us here today in the Capitol, who are ready to make sure that we are implementing Measure 114 appropriately, that we are closing the Charleston loophole, for example, has been a passion project of a lot of people, that we are really continuing the work that Oregon has now, told us they want us to be working on at the state level to keep Oregonians safe. So gun safety being one of the topic areas that my team and I will be leaning in on and supporting. Within that, we are aware that there is a gap in the law when an individual threatens mass harm. Our law enforcement statutorily doesn't have statutory coverage to act once they know that there's a threat. An individual essentially has to act on their threat in order for public safety to intervene. My office and I are working to find that language that will help our law enforcement keep the community safe as possible, while also really being sensitive to juvenile processes, threat assessments in our schools. But the goal being that when a true threat is made, that we are able to protect the community. So I'm working closely with our Washington County DA, a few of our police departments, safety and justice advocates, to make sure that we thread that needle right. And then working in the realm of domestic violence, my team and I are really concerned with making sure that we continue to address gaps in the law. And I'll be advocating for the Family Justice Center, along with my colleagues here, making sure that we have that that investment in our communities that's so needed. Generally interested in cybersecurity. We also have a constituent bill that we're working on relative to school bus cameras and allowing those. We currently don't allow those in Oregon, but many school districts would like them. And then in my district, we have the Kinder Morgan pipeline. I'm very interested in making sure we have high level of accountability for this petroleum pipeline that runs from Portland to Eugene under many of our communities, just a few blocks away from my house, right underneath my neighborhood, but also under most of our neighborhood, which was at one time agriculture and now it's neighborhoods. So this pipeline is no longer out in rural areas. It's very much in population centers. We're also looking at leaf blowers and small off-road engines and the contributions they make to greenhouse gas emissions. I'll be bringing back a few different toxics reductions bills, reducing the toxins in cosmetics, in products marketed to children, and also looking at pet stores and humane treatment of animals. So definitely looking at that humanity of our work. I'm going to be, I see a question. I'll look at that. And I'm sorry if I've bored anyone and sorry if I've left out a topic area that you want to hear about, but I'll wrap up. Let's see. During the push for ARPA, it says, and infrastructure funding, there had been a mention of preschool for all. Is this still a potential? This was seen as an equity measure considering many of our service sector workforce cannot afford childcare, which is a barrier for returning to the sector. Right now, we've got different counties leaning in different ways. Clackamas County, for example, looking at childcare, Washington County emphasizing preschool. We do need to continue this conversation at the statewide level. And I haven't heard of necessarily a coalescing around any one given topic, but I'm very interested in tracking that topic and would be happy to hear from anybody. I also want to underscore my support for the arts, and we'll be happy to work with anyone that has those values, and our nonprofit organizations. I was just talking to THPRD last night. Actually, that was the Northwest Health entity that who's really advocating for a nonprofit streamlining of policy so that we're not deterring anybody that wants to do good work. There's so much more we could say. Thank you so much for having me. I'll drop my contact information into the chat. If anybody wants to follow up, I'll drop my cell phone. You can either text me or email. I'll drop that as well. And I really look forward to staying in touch with all of you who have, advocacy and passion projects that you're working on and want to emphasize those to our office. So thanks again for having me and my team, and look forward to conversation at the end here.
Thanks, Representative Neron. I will go in order of appearance. Representative Helm arrived shortly before Senator Sollman. So Senator Sollman, you'll get the bat cleanup. Representative Helm, welcome.
Very good. Nice to be with you this morning. For folks that I'm crossing paths with for the first time, I'm Ken Helm. I've been in the legislature since 2015, and I've represented and still represent until we actually adopt the new maps early next year, House District 34, which has been east of 185th, north of TV Highway, basically, south of Highway 26, except for the West Haven neighborhood up behind St. Vincent's Hospital. And then moving to the east through the neighborhoods of Cedar Hills and Cedar Mill and parts of Southwest Portland. By good fortune, the districts were redrawn in a way that allowed me, even though I moved for personal reasons early on and in 2020, we redrew some of the districts to create a new version of House District 27, which essentially runs from that West Haven neighborhood south to Sexton Mountain and takes in the neighborhoods of Greenway and Voss, and retains some of the neighborhoods in around Cedar Hills and Cedar Mill. So that's the new district that I inherited in this last election, and I'm excited to be representing all the folks of Beaverton. A little bit of background on me and where I have ended up in the legislative work. I'm a land use attorney by trade. I'm now retired from that work, but I did that type of work for 25 years. Probably most important to our region is part of that time was as an attorney with Metro, doing their land use work. And actually, we are now in the process of building out some of the urban growth boundary additions that I helped defend in the late 90s and early 2000s, and the development up in Bethany and Springville Road, and then South Hillsboro in particular, was work that we started 20 years ago. Our housing supply is supposed to be a 20-year supply. And it's nice to see it coming online. I think it's been a little bit delayed because of infrastructure costs and the pandemic, but we're working on it. The committee assignments that I have had have followed my career experience. So I've served on our Energy and Environment Committee, which is now called the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. I chaired that for 3 sessions when we were concentrating on responding to climate change. And I've served on the Agriculture and Natural Resource and Land Use Committee since the beginning. I'm currently chairing that interim committee. The topic areas are agriculture, land use, and water. And so that is where my emphasis lies, and that's where a lot of the bills that I'll be working on focus for the 2023 session. I've served on other committees that have tackled more specific topics, like how we created the cannabis industry after Measure 91 was passed in 2015. I've served on the Economic Development Committee. I've served on the Revenue Committee briefly. And I am currently also on the Judiciary Committee. So a pretty broad swath of issues, and ones that touch Washington County in almost every respect. The stuff I thought I'd talk with you a little bit about are related to water and energy. I'll start with energy because we're at a point both nationally and globally in which we're struggling to meet our climate goals. And at the same time, and that's because we roared back from the pandemic. And as economic growth increased, so did worldwide emissions, so did national emissions of greenhouse gases, and so did Oregon's emissions. As a state, we're not anywhere close to meeting the targets that we set for ourselves well over a decade ago. And even though our Global Warming Commission has been providing us information and guidance along the way, it turns out to be awfully hard to turn that dial down. There's room for hope. In 2021, we passed the 100% clean electricity bill, and our first benchmarking of that will be in 2030. Our target is to move to completely fossil fuel electricity by 2040. From my point of view, time's going by quickly. We need to be working more diligently and more quickly to find replacement fuels and to work on the clean energy plans that are supposed to get us to 100% clean energy. So I'm concerned with that, and I'll be focusing a little bit on that in the coming session. Also, at the same time, we have great opportunities in energy. Hydrogen production, green hydrogen, which is made through electrolysis with renewable electricity, holds great promise. There are billions of dollars in federal tax credits that are available across the country, and some of those dollars will hit Oregon. So there's potential for hydrogen, and it's a very exciting potential because hydrogen that is generated from green and clean electricity can be used as industrial and agricultural inputs through green ammonia and other uses of industrial hydrogen. And of course, we need it for fueling when that technology becomes more ubiquitous. I know that our long-haul freight companies in the trucking industry are looking to switch to hydrogen as they can, and that solves one of our biggest transportation fuels issues, at least in part. The other really exciting thing for Oregon is offshore wind. The resource planning that the nation has done has revealed that off our southwest coast, the wind resources are so consistent and abundant, they are calling it the Saudi Arabia of wind. And the federal government is in the process of selling leases that identify territories along our southwest coast in federal waters for offshore wind to occur. That's exciting because the amount of clean energy that could come from offshore wind is truly astounding. And the trick is getting the offshore wind machines built in a way that's environmentally sensitive, and get the infrastructure to get that electricity onshore and distributed it in a way that benefits Oregonians. I mention these things, all of these three things, and I'll mention one more in a moment, because these are exciting opportunities that confront us, but we still don't know how to rate them and prioritize them from a state budgeting point of view, and how and where they need help. So one of the bills that I'm championing this time, and my colleague Rep Marsh, who chairs the the Environment and Natural Resources Committee, has taken in as a committee bill, is to develop a state energy strategy. So we know, so that we're not always just grabbing at the next bright and shiny object in the world of renewable energy. And I'm excited to do that. It will be a highly researched and data-driven process, which will give the legislature and our new governor much better tools to work with as we decide what type of energy mix is best for the state. And we also have to, at the same time, have some understanding and make some plans and trade-offs around how we site energy facilities. And so understanding those values is very important. The other exciting issue in the energy world is biofuels. Technology has been advancing quickly. Technology that can create the raw ingredients for a type of diesel fuel that is both a drop-in solution to replace fossil fuel diesel, and to utilize feedstocks that are abundant in our state, primarily wood waste from our logging operations that is currently burned and wasted. Again, with the partnership of Representative Marsh, we are trying to figure out how to catalyze that industry right now. It would be, if we were able to do so in Oregon, it would be our only indigenous fuel source, transportation fuel source. Right now, we take in gasoline and diesel from out-of-state sources, and we're only consumers. We don't have control of our own future there, which makes it difficult, once again, to meet our greenhouse gas goals. But if we can help catalyze that market here, we will be on our way to being on the map there. And by the way, about half of our transportation fuel consumption a year is diesel fuel for our freight industry. And to the extent that we can replace that with a fuel source that has a carbon intensity index that is far lower and gets us out of fossil diesel, it's really a huge win for the state. Moving to water, we have both local needs and we have statewide needs. Let me start with the statewide needs because our speaker-elect Dan Rayfield and our leadership team have asked me and my Republican partner Mark Owens from Harney County to lead the development of a drought package. One of the reasons we're doing this is because the notion of drought in the West is becoming increasingly antiquated. We are in drought all the time now. We have been in a mega drought in the West for 22 years. The reality of water scarcity and planning for it is a year-round issue. Drought is the new normal. We're not going to cycle in and out of it. It's here to stay for about another 2 decades, according to our climate scientists. So we as a state need to plan accordingly. In years past, drought declarations and emergency activities to help people and environments when we have super hot conditions that last all of our growing season, like we did in 2021, those got us by. But increasingly, we are lurching from disaster to disaster, whether it's wildfires or crop losses or drinking water crises across the state that are caused by water scarcity. So we'll have a package of both appropriations and actions that both take care of our near-term needs to protect people and environments when we do have events like the heat dome, and then put some money toward medium-term activities that are more along the lines of conservation, efficiency, and restoring our natural habitats in a way that allows them to store more water when we get it in the winter, and gradually release it into the environment and into our water tables to help restore our aquifers and restore our surface water around the state. So that is something that is both exciting to have on the table to work on, but because we've been used to this cyclical thing around drought, we're going to have to outgrow our old ideas about how to approach it and really put some money and resources toward planning for the future. Otherwise, we'll never get ahead of this issue. So there's some challenges ahead there, but I'm happy to be working on them. Here locally, a couple of things I'll just note. It's a long-term plan.
Helm, forgive me for interrupting. I'm cognizant of time. I want to make sure Senator Sollman has an opportunity to speak as well. So
okay.
I appreciate your comments. I just want to put you on notice that we're running up against a deadline.
Okay. Well, let me just say 2 quick things, and you can track down the work on this. Our own Willamette water supply that has been planned for 25 to 50 years is now in progress. It has a financial shortfall that is significant that was caused by the pandemic. We as a region need to champion the finishing of this water project, and it's going to take some state money. So I hope Washington County legislators will rally around that. The second thing I'll note is we do not in the state have a safety net for helping folks pay for water utility bills when they get behind. And we very much need to do that. We have that type of program with electricity, but we don't have one for water, and we need to get one. So those bills will be available soon if they're not already posted on the legislative website. So thanks for having me, and I'll turn it over to my good friend Janeen Sollman.
Thank you very much. Senator Sollman.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. Can you hear me okay? Is that good? I am currently in WLnsvey Campos district over here at the Reserve Golf Course at a Washington County Circuit Court legislative community leader breakfast, understanding some of the issues that we're facing through our Washington County court system and public defense. So I just really appreciate this opportunity, and I recognize the time. So I really want to be incredibly brief, but to say that how incredibly important this is that we remain in contact. We have not only a great turnover on our House side with, I believe, 21 members that have just exited, and having new members coming in. We have some new members that are coming in to the Senate, but thankfully the majority of them, including WLnsvey Campos, are experienced legislators. And so having the ability to have them come in and hit the ground running is exciting. And also, but how important it is for us as a community to stay connected, to making sure that you're reaching out to your legislators. I see a lot of familiar names on here, but coming to community conversations, continuing those, opportunities for conversation are incredibly important. Having just experienced the legislative days that we did in the Capitol, it's going to be cozy. And I say that because lobbyists, there's a lot of construction happening and there's not a lot of room. So lobbyists don't have the rooms and areas that they had to be able to go to. So there's going to have to be a lot of patience and grace as we get through this session together. And I think it is still incredibly important that while you feel you may not be able to come down to the Capitol because of those crowds, it is still very much open opportunity for you to schedule appointments with your legislators through virtual means. And be there to comment on those bills. I know my office, and I see Nicole Vargas is on this call. I also have Maria Gomez on the team. I have high school interns, college interns. I know that we're going to work together, putting together our community conversation schedule. But one of the first ones we're going to do in January is an OLIS, the Oregon Legislative Information System. We're going to put together a kind of a how-to and how you can follow some of those opportunities for, legislative action that is happening in the session. And I want to respect the time. So I just know that my contact information, Nicole just put that in. You can also reach me through social media means. We are, like I said, scheduling we just had our 100th community conversation this couple weeks ago, which is exciting, and we're going to continue that outreach. And it's where I get legislative ideas. It's where we build these opportunities for conversation. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity, and please let's continue to do so. Virtually brings us together, I think, a lot easier, sometimes in crazy schedules. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Sollman. Razia wins the award for the number of questions asked of any audience member this morning. She's clearly had her coffee. I want Razia, if there's any burning question that you had there on the ones that you put in the chat, Razia, do you want to ask now of any of the representatives or senators?
I would be delighted to. And I want to thank all of our representatives and senators for taking time this morning, because this has been absolutely informative. The two major things I'd like to ask, one is that for Washington County, and especially being part of the Portland Metro, are there any discussions for long-term arts and culture funding, any mechanisms that might be part of the discussions in this long session to recognize that arts and culture funding not only brings general operating support, but also brings jobs? And because of arts and culture, when it comes into the schools, we are also training our next workforce. We're building those critical thinking skills. My other question, Representative Helm, is about renewable energy. And when talking about potentially having wind energy and working with our federal partners, will the Oregon legislature be prepared to protect consumers from gouged for-profit corporate pricing? So let's start with arts, if anybody has that on their radar for this coming session. And if not, that's okay. I'll put my contact information back in the chat, and then potentially renewable energy.
Well, just real quickly on renewable energy, that is the function of our Public Utility Commission. And they are charged with protecting ratepayers. We have 3 investor-owned utilities that provide electricity and natural gas. The process for vetting rate increases as we do build out this infrastructure is very rigorous. It's very well known. We've done it for a long time. And so as we bring more resources on, depending who is going to be developing the energy and where it's going, to the extent that there is for-profit interest involved, they will be regulated by the same process that we have now, and no shortcuts.
Great. Yeah, especially in having potential for the small and mid-sized renewable energy farmers is what we call them in California. My mom's part of that sector in California. Thank you.
Anyone else want to respond to Razia's questions, or does anyone else have another question they'd like to ask in the last couple of minutes that we have here together?
I would love to just appreciate the enthusiasm and the passion for the arts, and welcome further conversations, Razia, because I really want to make sure that we are talking about the arts more. And when we find phenomenal advocates like you, we really need to embrace that. So feel free to reach out, and we can talk about where there are long-term funding sources or where it can be improved as well. And looking at how the arts have been impacted by COVID. And my sister is involved with theater and dance and always has been. And so, have been fairly connected to the trajectory of her and her friends throughout COVID. And, our theater scene is coming back. I just went to a few different high school live theater productions that were so exciting, but making sure that programs in our schools and then beyond, of course, are supported stably is something I'm happy to talk more about.
That would be wonderful. I'll reach out to you and your team. Thank you.
Go ahead, Senator Sollman.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add, let's not forget about the opportunities that we have with incorporating art with STEM education, and how incredibly important that is, that as we're looking at science, technology, engineering, and math, when we incorporate arts into that and really look at providing that focus, it opens up a different part of the brain for exploration and growth. And so I want to make sure that when we're having conversations, because I'm one of many advocates, especially on this screen, for STEM education, that when we're having those conversations, that we're making sure that arts are part of that conversation. And so I just wanted to provide you that please contact me if you have any thoughts on ideas for that. But working with our STEM partners, with our STEM consortium around STEM hubs around Oregon, making sure that they're also getting that same type of conversation and language as well, because they're driving so much of the STEM work here in Oregon. So thank you.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's as simple as changing it to STEAM and reminding everyone that that is part of what makes really strong scientists and really strong engineers and mathematicians, is that constant problem solving that an artist is doing on a daily basis. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anyone else have a question or a comment before we bring this to a close?
Glenn, if I can, thank you, everybody.
Of course, Julie.
It's been terrific. Senator Sollman, I just wanted to follow up on what you're thinking or alluding to about the physical space of the Capitol. We understand that there's going to be a lot of changes. Are you hearing anything about people not having in-person advocacy days, or are they discouraging that? We're just still trying, we had planned for an in-person one. Now we're trying to see if we need to pivot.
No, I mean, I still believe that I hear of people that are having and working on those types of advocacy days. I think that the sooner that you could contact the Capitol and just be able to work through the details of that, I think is good. I think I just really wanted folks to be prepared. I think we saw a small taste of that in legislative days, that it's going to be cramped. And the fire marshal was there and provided an alert even for one day, because they are counting occupancy and making sure that it is, not in unsafe conditions. So I think we need to be prepared for that. So whether you want to have that conversation and say, maybe we should look at how we prepare to have that time be more virtual, that I believe that COVID has given us this option to still have contact with each other. And that should be something we should consider, because it's not just one group that is having advocacy days. There could be multiple groups within it, and the space is and not only the space in front of the hearing rooms and in the hearing rooms, but if you wanted to witness and take part in some of the floor sessions. On the Senate side, some of our floor is actually closed. Some of our gallery is actually closed to construction. So yeah, just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Senator.
Well, I want to thank our legislators for being here. I know you're very busy. I know a couple of you came from a breakfast meeting. Kevin and I are going to coordinate better next year. He said he's going to invite me next year to his event so that I don't create an event on top of his. And thanks to everyone who showed up and the questions. We've got stuff in the chat we will share as a recap for folks, and especially those who weren't here. Have a great rest of your week. Find some time to slow down during the holidays. And we'll hopefully see you soon. Take good care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.